You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by listeners like you, supporters on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/missionlog.
This episode of Mission Log is also sponsored by ExpressVPN. Secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/missionlog today. That's expressvpn.com/missionlog, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/missionlog.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 434, Extreme Measures.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we link up to the old neural imager and poke around inside Star Trek, revealing the morals, meanings, and messages, and trying to determine if the whole thing stands the test of time.
This week, a fantastic voyage inside the inner space of Sloan's brain, where a brainstorm means Bashir and O'Brien need to revert to extreme measures. That's it. That's the title part, Extreme Measures. I'm sorry, I was just embellishing.
Brain? Brain? What is brain? And we'll take a trip into a place just as confusing and fraught with danger in a moment when John gives us this week's trivia. Meanwhile, here's how you can reach us. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek, and that's why we want to hear from you. Use Mission Log Pod to give us a like and a share on Facebook and Twitter. Then follow and rate us at Apple Podcasts to help others find the show. You can call us on Skype at Mission Log Pod or by dialing 323-522-5641. Send us an email at missionlog@roddenberry.com. And remember, we may use your comments on Mission Log or Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. Now let's see here. Controller forward, then controller back, then controller left, then controller right, and then enter John Champion with this week's trivia.
That's how it works. That's how I do trivia every week. So here we go for Extreme Measures. This episode was written by David Weddle and Bradley Thompson, and here we are so close to the end of the run of DS9, and this marks their final contributions to DS9 and Star Trek overall. But don't worry, those writer connections run deep, and not too long after DS9, they found themselves working on Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica. This episode is directed by Steve Posey. Remember that Steve came over to DS9 with a resume that included other genre shows of the era like Babylon 5, Space Above and Beyond, and Dark Skies. Here he finishes up the fourth and final of his Star Trek directorial credits. Now, anybody who listens to Mission Log or has a passing interest in TV history knows all about the Bottle Show, and this is a prime example. Falling very near the end of the season and in the middle of a long, expensive arc of shows, it became necessary to hone down the production in anticipation of the bigger budget needed for the end of the series. Therefore, we've cut what was one possible plot line, like Section 31 being on a planet. We've also trimmed down most of the other characters here too, which brings us to guest stars. What's notable here is who isn't in the episode. We spent a lot of time lately with the supporting guest characters, but there is no Dukat or Wynn or Damar or Weyoun. There was an early draft that had Weyoun and the female changeling, but along with many other ideas, that was cut. We also noticeably don't have Quark, which is interesting because there are 2 scenes in his bar after hours. That's another scene that was cut, kind of a redux of Quark visiting Odo in the infirmary, trying to cheer him up in his Quark way. What we do have, though, is William Sadler back as Sloan. I hope I'm not giving it away by saying that this is his third and final appearance on DS9, and that is the total of Sadler's run on Star Trek. You already know him from so much more, though, and if you need a fix after this, go back and rewatch Bill and Ted, or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or Shawshank Redemption, or Roswell, or just so much more.
Extreme measures. It's like Herman's head, without Herman. Actually, I'm going to get John to try to explain this to you.
Prologue. In the infirmary on DS9, Odo is in terrible condition. The virus has ravaged his body as he flakes away. At his insistence, Dr. Bashir reveals that he has maybe a couple of weeks to live. Then Odo asks to see Kira one last time. They say a heartfelt, tragic goodbye, as Odo insists that she return to help Damar, as he doesn't want the last thing he sees to be pain in her eyes. So Kira is off, with Garak, to return to help the Cardassian rebellion, but not before seeing Dr. Bashir one more time, where he tells her he'll do everything he can. Captain Sisko asks the Doctor if there's anything he can do, perhaps via help from Starfleet Medical, but Bashir says he's got everything he needs. Until Miles pipes up. They have been investigating one more angle, the one that Section 31 created the virus and purposely infected Odo to wipe out all the changelings when they link. Sisko is shocked, dismayed, at a bit of a loss. Bashir says he and O'Brien didn't mention anything for very good reasons, like the Romulan neural probe he just happens to have and intends to use on whomever they capture from Section 31. Sisko says the whole thing is still probably a very bad idea. Act 1. It's very late. Neither O'Brien nor Bashir can sleep, which leads to some after-hours darts in a closed Quark's bar. Julian couldn't concentrate on his book, A Tale of Two Cities, because the thought of how deeply this conspiracy must go has been gnawing away at him. There must be dozens of people at Section 31 who are in on it. Still, their minds have to be on Odo. And as if like clockwork, when Julian retires for the night, who should show up at the foot of his bed but Sloan? Only this time Julian is ready and traps him in a containment field. Sloan is smugly unaware of why he's there until Julian reveals he doesn't actually have a cure for Odo. A stun blast from a phaser, and a minute later Sloan is in a new containment field in a makeshift science lab. He tries both to reason and bully his way out of it, but no use. Dr. Bashir explains calmly and rationally that he knows Sloan must know the cure because he came there specifically to destroy what he thought Julian had. So how will they get what they're after if Sloan won't talk? With the Romulan mind probe. And that's not just to drink at the experience. Sloan tries again to reason, but he can't. Julian can't have the cure because, in Sloan's estimation, it's too dangerous that the cure would fall into the hands of the Founders. Sensing it's his last duty, Sloan then activates a neural depolarizer in his brain that will kill him and take his secrets with him. Act 2. Acting very quickly, Bashir is able to stabilize Sloan, even in his damaged state. He'll die soon, and the information dies with him too, unless Bashir asks O'Brien to tech the tech like he's never teched it before. The result is a kind of VR hologame interactive brain link that will let Bashir walk around in Sloan's consciousness and experience what? Well, he's not sure exactly, but he knows the answers he needs are in there, and he has just the failsafe to get himself out, using his enhanced genetics to raise his blood pressure as assigned to the machine to wake him up. Worst case, if Sloan dies, it could take virtual and real Bashir with him. That's all well and good, but the chief insists on going along as an extra measure of protection. They both activate the neural links and find themselves in a facsimile of a DS9 turbolift, rising higher and higher and faster and faster. Act 3. The lift shakes and shudders, traveling at ludicrous speed. When it finally stops and the door opens, Bashir and O'Brien are greeted by Sloan. Well, the part of his psyche that's there anyway, and This guy really wants to help them help Odo. When he starts to tell them the details of the cure, though, he gets all garbled like he spent too much time in the Red Room. He insists that he wants to help them, but something is stopping him until they can all go to the ward room together. In the ward room, Sloan makes a heartfelt speech, apologizing to the people he loves for the pain he has caused them. The assembled family, memories of Sloan's family, watch and listen and applaud, then lovingly forgive him. With that bit of catharsis complete, Sloan is ready to hand over a pad containing the medical data the doctor needs. But just as he does, the door slides open and there's Sloan on the other side with a phaser who shoots and kills the more benevolent version of himself. He says he can't let them have the information, then he disappears down the corridor. Act 4. In the real world, Ezri Dax and Captain Sisko walk in on the scene of the 3 unconscious men hooked up to machines and sharing each other's brains. They don't know exactly what's going on, but Sisko calls for some medical support just in case. On the inside of Sloan's noggin, O'Brien and Bashir continue to race the clock, now with the complication of a very uncooperative Sloan. A security guard shows up, creating another blockade to finding Sloan, and this guy isn't messing around. He fires his phaser at both, and the pain is very real, even if all of this is just mind games. Backed up against a bulkhead, in pain, Bashir tries to end the simulation and remove the 2 men from Sloan's mind. It doesn't work, though. Bashir and O'Brien are stuck, in pain, possibly dying in Sloan's mind. And as the minutes tick down, they both share a bit of personal insight. Miles didn't tell Keiko where he was going, mostly not to worry her or the kids, but also to avoid an argument about how he spends too much time with Dr. Bashir, which he admits he does. That leads Bashir to his own confession. He hasn't told Ezri how he feels about her, but he does like spending time with O'Brien, so there's that. Moments of awkwardness are spared by the appearance of a tunnel with a light at the end of it. Could it be the tunnel to the afterlife? Sure, they could walk toward it, but O'Brien isn't about to give up this easily. Even in their weakened states, he and the doctor get up, walk toward a door, and open it, and that brings them back into the real world again, out of their mental illusion, where they find Sloan is dead. Act 5. Bashir checks in on Odo, who is at death's door himself. It's exhausting and frustrating as Bashir realizes he can't have done more for either of them. Retiring to his room, he picks up the book he just started, A Tale of Two Cities, and starts reading. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and that's it. The same thing on every page, because that's all he can remember. He shows it to O'Brien, and they both understand. They're still in Sloan's mind. He's dying. The virtual situation they're in is shaking, and it's all because they must be getting closer to the answer. They return to the door that recently took them out and find this time that it opens, and there's Sloan, smug as ever, even if he's aware of his imminent demise. He taunts Bashir with the room full of stuff around him, information, schematics, pads, all the collected data to cripple Section 31, all there for Bashir's taking. O'Brien reminds him, they're there for a reason. As tempting as it is, they're there for Odo and have to get the data about his cure. As the station deteriorates around them, Bashir knows what he has to do. He's absorbed what he needs from the medical files, then wills his way back into the real world with O'Brien in tow. They awaken with the help of Sisko and Ezri, who Bashir remarks looks beautiful. Sloan, for sure now, is dead. With the knowledge he needed, Bashir prepares a dose of the antiviral for Odo. It's painful, but it works, and Odo is back to himself. Late night again, time for darts and drinks in an empty Quark's bar. O'Brien pours a toast to them, to Odo. Then O'Brien asks if they had the time, would Bashir have stayed around to gather the information about Section 31? He may have, but he needed his friend there at the time to steer them to their goal. Miles is off for dinner with Keiko, and invites his best friend to come along. The end. Hey, look, right at the top, we got to say a big tip of the hat to Mission Log listener Gregory for Sloan's brain that we mentioned in the intro. Nicely done, Gregory.
That deserves a T-shirt for sure.
Yeah, totally.
And Alan, you can't take that now either.
Oh, it might just happen. It might end up in the meme anyway.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I'll lift the embargo on that. So yeah,
you lift the ban. Okay, because like a good joke is a good joke. Yeah. I gotta say, this is an interesting thing where I feel like in our journey with these characters on DS9, we may have felt at times like the Odo and Kira relationship was forced and not fully formed, and then I don't think we both really accepted how they got back together. That just, we talked in a closet for, several hours. Now we're fine. But I will say this, they have had some great writing as of late. There was so much truth to that scene previously where Kira is telling Garrick, this is how it is. This is how I am honoring Odo by letting him believe that I don't know this. And their goodbye in the infirmary was superb. Mm-hmm. It was a great moment.
Scenes like this are really difficult to watch if you've had to say goodbye to somebody, a loved one, especially at the bedside or in their hospital bed. Mm. And you can tell that, I think, as actors, either they've studied the scene or observed this or have endured something like this in their life, because that scene was so real. It's even hard to it's very hard for me to talk about now because I went through something like that, and it makes it all the more earned. And wherever their relationship is or how it moves forward from here, it's an earned relationship, and I'm glad that this was in the episode.
Yeah, same.
Some things I'm not so glad about, though, in the episode. So it's nice that Julian and O'Brien are kind of talking to Sisko and talking about their plans, and then he said something about ethics and the Romulan memory scanner and Section 31 and legal and ethical issues, and I'm like, yeah. Sisko, are we going to talk about ethics when it comes to Romulans and your ethics with Romulans?
That's right, folks. We are never going to let this go because clearly at this point, Sisko has just completely convinced himself of the validity of his own actions.
Yeah. I was not a fan of that interchange, but at the same time, though, it's not like he's going to say, well, this is what I did, so I understand what you're doing, right?
Okay, you know what? Here's the thing. He's never going to say that, but at any point, do they ever have a beer together at some point and go, I've done things that I wasn't proud of? Like, could we just get that out of him? Instead of the speech about ethics.
Would be a great scene, for sure.
Yeah. Best of times, worst of times, and even now I can't help but associate that with Wrath of Khan.
Totally.
I mean, I part of me was surprised that they used that. Part of me was not. Maybe now it's just part of the Trek fabric, but, that's fine.
I would have liked Jillian to have turned to Miles and said, "Message, Miles?"
None that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Playing darts solo as a genetic superhuman, that's got to be really boring. Like, how do you beat...
Yeah.
Like perfect scores, right? Like, right. Triple tens again. Of course. I don't know.
Exactly.
The whole thing with... It's lucky that they know Sloan so well and that Sloan decided to sit again at the foot of Julian's bed, because if he didn't, what would happen to their trap?
I know, right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing that they clearly established that over and over again in the show, But yeah, if he just decided this time to not do that, you wonder what would happen. And man, Sloan, with the whole everything okay at home? I'd hate to see anything happen to them. Man, he's just being a gangster now at this point. I mean, oof. Yeah. Rough.
And I'll throw then Keiko's probably a gangster too, because both of them completely ignore Chester the cat.
Ooh.
So Keiko is gangster, right?
Yeah. Too soon. Yeah. I love Sloan on the examination table. You expect me to talk? And I was like, no, Mr. Sloan, I expect you to die. That's what I wanted out of that scene.
If that happened, Like you would have texted me, our phones would have blown up, and
I know
we'd be doing that whole scene all over the place.
Exactly.
And also it would have kind of completely like just bookended our man Bashir perfectly.
I know,
perfectly.
right,
Yeah.
right. I do love the ease with which we kick off that montage when Dr. Bashir says, I need a multitronic enchromatic interpreter. That is such a beautifully executed piece of technobabble. I'm honestly tempted to email Mike Okuda and say, can I just get an Okudagram that says that so I can stick it on my VR rig? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's the way to go now.
So we should put that in like really nice, just sans serif font on a T-shirt, and then on the front, and then on the back say 10 times fast without mistake, 1 free drink.
Right
around Las Vegas.
That'll be a challenge. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's stuff to unpack with Sloan, although it is kind of a weird thing to determine exactly what to unpack with this episode. But the first Sloan that we meet in the simulation, and look, I understand that it is not a simulation in the respect that it's not a holosuite, but look, just for clarity's sake, I'm going to call it that, so forgive me. That Sloan is intent on helping them. And I was wondering, is the script even trying at any point to say anything about what's going on in his psyche? Like, is there this part of him that is a really good guy and he's just overpowered by the part of himself that is nefarious and driven by other motivations, or are we just not supposed to think too hard about that?
Well, the whole dinner apology thing, I'm like, why do we even care? Like, who cares, right?
I know.
Like, okay, so even if like the neural consciousness part of him is being honest, who cares, right? Mm-hmm. It's Sloan. He made his bed, lie in it. Why are we bothering to humanize him? Oh, and there's a whole like, thanks, Muffin. Gross. Yeah. I'm like, oh God. I was like, ugh.
I felt so bad for that poor woman. I was just like, oh, and see, and now you're still never gonna know.
And honestly,
well, unless Julian shows up and tells you about something.
I was doing something. I was listening to it on the side. I was going to get back to it and rewind it. I honestly thought that his wife handed him a muffin. Like, because they were at a dinner party. Like, oh, thanks, Muffin.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. And then I was like, ugh, gross.
Yeah. It was that's a strange scene, and I wondered if they really felt like, oh, we're doing something important here about humanizing him, but I don't. I think it's too little, too late.
None of it's earned,
and it
none
feels
of it. None of it's earned.
It's not earned. Exactly. It feels so incongruous. But okay. Well, we'll get to more of that later.
Thanks, Muffin. Right.
Okay, but here's the thing. Did neither O'Brien nor Bashir decide to take off their comm badges before going into that simulation? Like, we're in a secret place, and we can't let anybody know what's going on, but the computer, literally anybody can find us because we're just laying here with our comm badges.
I mean, the whole scene like sets up a really great bar joke. Okay, so Cisco and Esri walk into a bar and stumble upon an unconscious threesome. So, right? I mean, that's a weird thing, right?
They're never going to live that down.
They're like, Cisco walks in, it's like, what the heck is going on here? But let me tell you something about ethics and integrity, just, while you're unconscious. Right. I'm going to confess everything to you right now because you can't hear me anyway. Right?
Oh, that would be classic, yeah. And of course, Miles didn't tell Keiko anything, which then has to lead us to the true bromance confessions, which I'm sure we'll have something to say about later as well.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah.
I like the kind of like the Gibbsian Matrix type of, if you get hurt in the Matrix or in the consciousness, that's real, mm-hmm. and if you die in the consciousness, mm-hmm. that's real. I like how they mm-hmm. use that element of science fiction as part of the reality in the story, and that's. I don't remember when The Matrix came out. I think it was 1999, so maybe it's kind of in there. Mm-hmm. But Gibson's Neuromancer came out in the early 80s, I think.
Yeah.
So, when Cowboy jacked into the system, neural net-wise, he knew if he was going to die in the system, he dies in real life. So I thought that was mm-hmm. kind of smart. Maybe like me a bit more than your wife. Okay. We'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. I do like, it's not a big deal at all. In fact, it is such a tiny deal. But second or third time through watching this, I thought it was a very conventional use of this idea of the light at the end of the tunnel, and their discussion about, it's sort of the next step, it's the afterlife, whatever. That's fine. We haven't explored sort of the spiritual sides of Miles or of Dr. Bashir, and I guess from a purely scientific medical standpoint, there's this idea that the brain sort of kicks into that when it's, deprived of oxygen, and toward the end, a lot of people, kind of see this bright light, but I wasn't sure what to make of it. It was just sort of like the low-hanging fruit. It's like the easy thing to go to telegraph to the audience, like, this is what you probably think. This is also what the characters are thinking. But obviously it doesn't lead to a deeper discussion about anything on their part. It's just the symbolic thing.
Technically, wouldn't they be seeing what Sloan would be experiencing? Wouldn't it be?
Oh, that's interesting.
Wouldn't it be from Sloan's point of view, since they're in Sloan's consciousness? So if he is about to expire, then that's what Sloan's belief system would see.
Could be.
That's what I thought.
Could very well be.
I also thought that it's a light at the end of this episode, so that's also good. So, right? Yes, I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic and realistic at the same time.
Sure.
I like the repeating passage of the best of times, worst of times in the bar, because it was very like deja vu-ish, like in the Matrix, like when the cat, walked and then walked again in front of Neo, and he's like, "Hey, look at that, deja vu." I thought that was kind of neat.
It's also like me giving a book report on Dickens when I was in high school too. It's just, I remember this part mainly because they said it in The Wrath of Khan, and don't ask me anything else.
And then the teacher said, "Mr. Spock is not in that dialogue."
It's not. I swear there was no Spock in Dickensian England yet.
Not at all. I liked Bashir's bedside manner at the end. I thought that was nice to kind of just alleviate a little bit of the tension of the episode. I thought that was good.
That was good. Yes. Yeah. And in that last scene, Odo's makeup, wow. I mean, I love that they commit to this progression of the virus. That was pretty incredible. I mean, that was a scary looking degradation of his body that we were seeing. And yes, the pain was, well, apparently very temporary. This is going to hurt. And then it's just like, oh, okay, then there's a morph and he's okay. So, all right, good.
I really like the end when they started drinking from a bottle of straight up real booze, like real whiskey. And I think that the original label on that bottle, John, I think it was O'Brien liked it, so it must have been an Irish pot still whiskey. And if so, logic would dictate that the label would have probably said writer's tears.
It's good to find out who keeps Sloan company most of the time. His head is full of imaginary friends, who also happen to be himself.
Promotional consideration on this episode of Mission Log is by ExpressVPN. Secure your online activity and get full access to the content on your favorite streaming services by visiting expressvpn.com/missionlog today.
That's expressvpn.com/missionlog, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/missionlog.
We will get right back to extreme measures, but first, an extreme thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, all of you who have joined us over at patreon.com/missionlog, and furthermore have joined us in the Mission Log Discord. Norm, how good is our Discord?
Oh, I think it's just... I'd like to pat ourselves on the back and say it's one of the greatest things ever, since sliced bread or Keiko's crab rolls, but
it's that good.
It's that good. It's that good. We're so fortunate, and we're so privileged to have so many great people have come and subscribed to Patreon to support us, and then have access to Discord and really grow the community, really create a lot of great friendships and relationships, and sharing all of your fandom enthusiasm, and all your love for all things Star Trek and everything in science fiction and food and random fandom. And it's just been such a blessing for all of us, I think, especially since we're still locked down and need to find ways to reach out and connect.
Yeah, it's all about that continued conversation. You know, we get our say on the show, and then we get to dive into our Discord where we can have sometimes serious, oftentimes just a lot of fun, kind of blowing off steam, talking about Trek or whatever else it is that you're into, and in a much more inviting community environment than a lot of what you find online. And that's not all. Our Patreon, you get exclusive early access to our shows. You get exclusive swag that is only for our Patreon supporters. And I'd like to just say a special thank you to some of our most recent members. So Patrick, Matty, Brian, Rachel, Charlie, Catherine, Mary Virginia, thank you all for joining us on Patreon, and we absolutely look forward to seeing you in the Discord as well.
Yep, and so don't be shy. I know that some of you, you're new, and just say hi. Welcome to the family, and welcome to the community. And you can always find us if you want to subscribe or if you want to participate at patreon.com/missionlog. Look for all of the entry-level offerings that we have there. Find the one that suits you best, and then be part of our community.
All right, Norman. Wow. Right from the top. Now, we had a little fun with it there with Cisco expressing his moral outrage, but there is a great line in there, and it's something that has come up pretty recently as well, when Cisco is confronted with this idea about what Section 31 is doing. Genocide done by people who call themselves Federation citizens. Okay, good. Good. First of all, good. I'm glad we have Cisco calling it like it is, and I'm glad he's morally repulsed at the idea, as he should be. Now, I feel like we did it. We had our fun. I'm not really going to take Cisco to task here for his own ethical shortcomings because, well, we've done that not too long ago, like mere minutes ago. Mm-hmm. But what I am going to do here, because that line stuck out to me, is just remind everyone that we had this conversation back in iBorg. And I mentioned it again relatively recently on this show. And it bears repeating that there is never a moral justification for genocide. Picard wouldn't do it. Cisco can't imagine it. And here we are with an organization within the Federation, adjunct to Starfleet, that just has that as part of the plan. And I'm sorry, but as hard as it is to win the war, as bad as your options may sound, still isn't a justification for genocide. Mm-hmm. And this, dear friends, and I'm saying that while looking at Norman, but thinking about everybody else, that's why I've grown weary to the point of hatred for Section 31. And this is where I think DS9 dropped the ball with them. For every step of the way, we've been teased with who they are and how far their power actually extends, and we're supposed to be opposed to them, but every step, we've been told that they're just a part of how it all works. It's just baked into the system. And my, oh my, do they have resources. It undermines everything, and we should all be absolutely horrified. Mm-hmm. I really like Bashir's line, and I wrote this one down. This thing that has slithered its way into the heart of the Federation must be destroyed. And can I just say, you are damn right, Julian, and we should all be agreeing with you instead of shrugging our shoulders and saying, that's the way it is sometimes. This is always going to be a sticking point for me, Norman, for all the things that I have truly loved about DS9, and I think they get absolutely right in terms of technique and character writing. There is something about this that will always stick in my craw because it was an interesting problem to deal with, but it became a much bigger problem by making it all pervasive and over such a long period of time.
True.
Too.
And I was having the same conversation with a friend about how insidious and kind of like how behind the scenes Section 31 has been since the formation of the Federation Charter. Article this, Section 31. We all know the history of it, and we all have our varying opinions on it. But think about it this way: in Mirror Mirror, when Captain Kirk was trying to negotiate dilithium trade with the Hulkins, and the Hulkin leader said, "You have the might to take them from us," and then Kirk says, "But we won't consider that." consider that. He said, we won't use might. If diplomatic relationships broke down with the Hulkins and the Enterprise left, what, Section 31 comes in and makes sure that negotiations continue? Is that what we're talking about?
Right.
Now extrapolate that over every single time where diplomatic relations didn't work in the Federation's favor. The Federation leaves, goes off to their next mission, or I should say the Enterprise, or whatever ship. Then Section 31 slides themselves in there and said, this is what's going to happen if diplomatic relations don't work. How are your kids, Minister? Because he said that to his own people. He just said that to Miles. Like, how are the kids, Miles? How's Keiko? Is this what we're dealing with here? So there's that insidiousness very easily accepted by the audience who appreciates this storyline of Section 31. I don't, but there are people out there in the Deep Space Nine audience community that does. But my bigger problem with Section 31 in this episode, and especially where it comes with to Miles and Julian, like, are they punching above their own weight when it comes to this almost this over-ambitious plot to actually try and capture an agent of an agency that has been invisible for 300 years?
I know.
It's almost comedic, right?
Yeah.
Because here are Julian and Miles in a nutshell. And now I'm not insulting the fans who love these two, but let's look at them on paper. Julian is a privileged doctor who has designs of being a spy, but just in his daydreams. Right. Miles is just he's kind of a blue collar, roll up his sleeves, kind of like 9 to 5 kind of guy. You know, he's exhausted, he has problems with his wife, he loves his family, and that's about it. That's the extent of his ambition. Yeah. These two gentlemen, we are supposed to believe, are smart enough to create a plan to capture one of Section 31's finest agents, whose job, whose life, whose entire existence is to remain invisible until seen. This is what we're supposed to believe in this episode.
Yeah, that is a major problem with it. And, you know, I joked about it when they cooked up this plan, that I was looking forward to seeing how this actually plays out. And to be very honest, this was a plot detail that I did not remember. So this was, the reveal here was new to me. And it's sort of... It's sort of the problem with how Section 31 has been designed on paper for DS9. We've only met Sloan, and we've only had lip service given to exactly what he does and how big the organization is. And, okay, so they had a man in the president's cabinet. That was a reveal in this episode, which I don't like at all. He was obviously able to manipulate Admiral Ross. So yes, their reach is far and wide, but we've only ever literally just met this one person, and this one person has been 5 steps ahead of everybody else at all times. So it does seem like a completely impossible task, and I guess the only part of it that we can possibly believe is just, all right, he shows up in the same place. Why didn't Bashir already have a containment field there anyway? I mean, like, literally, the first time that happens, a containment field is going in place.
Right. Pressure sensor on the cushion, on the chair.
Yeah. There you go. Done.
On the other side of the coin, John, as much as it's hard to believe that Julian and Miles can actually successfully pull off a plan like this, like Sisko's like, what happens if it does work? Or what happens if you actually catch him? What then? But what's even more baffling and probably even harder to swallow is that Sloan did get captured.
I know, right?
Like, come on. I'm like, really?
I know.
He doesn't have a way out of... He doesn't actually see every possible avenue of why this is happening.
Yeah.
That, to me, is just... ridiculous, because he's the guy, he's the black bag, right? He's the operator, he's the man between the shadows that you don't catch, and all of a sudden, hey, Bashir's got the cure. All of a sudden, the one that he just asked requisitions for to try and get the secret to a couple weeks ago, and now he has it.
Suspicious.
Sure, I'll buy that. Really?
There is something here that I do like about Bashir's logic, and it is a good scene for people to kind of consider if they ever want to go down that rabbit hole about conspiracy theories. I love Bashir's explanation of the problem with conspiracies. In the end, I came up with at least 73 people. And Miles says, like, oh, I'm surprised it wasn't 7,300 or whatever. And yes, that is exactly why conspiracies rarely ever work, if they even exist, and why the ones that do occur are usually so easy to expose, because you get literally more than 2 people working on anything, and it is bound to explode in their faces, and the details are too easy to follow.
Here's a question. I didn't put it down on my notes, but when you're talking about this, just in terms of statistical probabilities, it brings up the fact that why doesn't Julian ask the Jack Pack to help him work on the cure?
Oh, my God. Of course.
Right?
Of course.
That's
they
4
totally
genius-level scientists.
Yeah.
You know, or genius-level intellects.
Yes.
It's sad that in the end he didn't just come up with 47 people, because that's an opportunity.
That's very true. Missed opportunity there. Yeah. Now, I'm going to say this, and you know, this is an interesting episode because we're sort of skipping around a little bit, and this part of our podcast isn't usually the part where we talk about production technique or storytelling devices, but I kind of feel like I have to at this one because it is such a major part of the episode. The whole thing hinges on us buying the premise, first of all, and then partly on us buying the twist at the end of Act 4. I did not buy that for a second. And I wonder if that's because of movies like The Matrix and Inception, because it all has to do with the individual mind's perception. And I just kept thinking that they had to have a scene where they think they're in the real world again, but they aren't. Like, that was just obligatory for the script.
American Werewolf in London did it best, by the way.
Bingo. Yes. Now, the other problem here is I just keep playing the home version in my head, and I had a lot of trouble suspending disbelief because we spend an awful lot of time setting up the idea that memories are just streets or corridors or file drawers rather than constructs of the mind literally every time a memory is recalled. So I understand that there is a money-saving concern here for the budget, but maybe I would have even had an easier time if we're just at Starfleet Medical. If we are back in that memory with Odo, you know, what happened when he got this, and how do we keep rewinding that scene and go to the place where this was come up. But yeah, that was actually, I don't know if you had the same issue too, where you're just thinking like, oh yeah, well they're not in the real world.
Yeah, you know, it's a trope that gets played out fairly, you know, regularly in these types of narratives. I really liked your idea. Thank you, John, for putting on your writer hat of having Odo involved, because the scene of the crime is when Odo was at Starfleet Medical, and Sloan could have been there with the both with the plague and the cure at the same time. You know, in that room full of people, a la X-Files. You know, you'll have, you know, somebody in the corner smoking a cigarette. You know, obviously because you have to have that guy. You have like a room full of people in suits looking down at Odo getting the disease, and Sloan off to the side saying like, okay, I'm the only one that has both the disease and the cure committed to memory, so in case we get captured, I can suicide myself and we can still kill the founders. That still all works. And then you have Renee involved, too, in the story. So, yeah, and you're still in the bottled episode. The problem that I still have with this episode, again, it asks too many big asks to the audience. And there are no real earned payoffs, because this is literally a 10-minute story in a 50-minute episode.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you extrapolate a very short, very tight story that can be told very economically and then turn it into The Hobbit. Right? Right. You have to fill all of this time with all of these different threads that generally will turn into issues, because you don't need that kind of time to tell this kind of a story. It would have been better off if they took 3 consecutive bottle stories and intercut between the 3 of them. Kira and Garrick going off meeting Damar, then Julian and O'Brien doing the thing with Sloan, and then maybe even Cisco wrestling with the whole, how do I get everyone back on track because we're still trying to win a war. Right. Because it was nice seeing him in this episode, but like, oh, hi, Benjamin. Like, you know, all of a sudden he's there. Yeah. Right? So.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any thoughts about the bromance as we...
Yeah, I do like that, though. I do like that. I don't really think it needs to be explicitly done, again, in a 50-minute episode, spending time, a lot of time on that. But there is something to be said about the forging of relationships in times of war and in times of stress. And I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual in nature. It doesn't necessarily have to transcend that. There is an unwritten relationship between men of a friendship that transcends the word, transcends friendship, transcends relationship, transcends love, transcends all of these different labels that you want to put on something that's just an unspeakable bond or band of brothers. Right. And I think that that's where Julian and Miles are. And I don't think that they needed to have that scene where they're talking about, well, yes, my wife loves me. I'm going to secure my manhood in front of everyone else. And then, well, I'm in love with Ezri, who I've just known for maybe a couple months. And that secures my manhood. Who cares? You guys, you don't have to express it in I love you, man. You guys are brothers forever. And you love each other as brothers forever. That's all that needs to be unsaid, not said.
If the Jackpack went around thwarting Section 31's plans, would that make them the Sloan gunmen?
Whew. That was some extreme conversation, John. Extreme conversation.
That's what we do. Extreme mission logging. Yeah.
Extreme mission logging for extreme measures for this extreme conversation. But I think that we brought up some really interesting points. And as we do it here in Mission Log, we always come to the end, taking a look at, does this episode hold up? Does it withstand the test of time? And then finally, we take a look at the morals and meanings and messages of the episode, if any, if we can find any, or if they speak to us in any certain way. So I'd like to start with you, John. I'd like to bring you in here. And let's see how this episode, if it did, held up for you.
Well, I think we're going to hit on some familiar themes that we've already discussed in our talk today. My biggest question about this episode is why. It just feels like it's purely functional and literally the longest possible route to go the shortest distance. I mean, literally all we need is get the information from Section 31. But we literally just burned an hour doing that. And I was so shocked the first time around watching this episode that there was no B plot. I had to make sure that I didn't miss something the second time around. Like when I finished it, I watched it and I was like, okay, now, a day later, a day or two later, I'll watch it again. Did I miss something? Because I don't recall there being a B plot to really talk about, oh, no. It was all that. And that just seems like such a poor use of time here. And the problem, well, there are a few problems, but there is a very fine line with science fiction stories where I feel like we want the fantastical, but we also want the believable. And Star Trek generally does an incredible job of creating a fictional universe, but it feels real, like all the technological progress is just a given, and then you and I as audience members can be very at ease there. So the biggest sin, or maybe one of the biggest sins of the episode, is that this does what bad science fiction does. It has to go to such great lengths to explain the technology that we have to swallow that it ultimately takes me out of the story. It just feels like manufactured drama, and that ultimately becomes very boring. And now the other sin committed here is telling instead of showing. We know that Bashir and the Chief are best buds. We know it's a bromance. You actually don't need to have them sit there and talk about it and telegraph it to the audience because they've already earned all of that. And I'm sorry, but Sloan is either aware and helpful or he isn't, but he's a fully realized person. I don't know. I will say at the very least they gave him maybe some redeeming quality by having people around who liked him. But even then, I just want to go to his wife in the real world and say, do you know how awful he is? So if this episode had actually been the end of Section 31, I might have been fine with that if we hadn't already baked it into all of Star Trek retroactively. I look at this and I go, we were on such a good streak after a number of disappointing episodes in season 7. This was a gigantic bump in the road that should have never happened. There is so much of this could have been resolved more quickly and elsewhere, and not waste time on this. So no, it does not hold up in any way, shape, or form that I can think of. How about you, Norman?
I was on such a tear in the last segment that I can't believe that I actually stole like most of my notes in this segment talking about how I felt.
Okay.
Because I agree, John. The final arc. You've heard us talk about how we felt about the episode started with from Penumbra to now, and every single episode, our analysis of the episode has been positive and even more positive, and even just we've fallen in love with certain episodes. We can't believe like how good certain episodes really were, how we're marching towards the end, how we're reaching this climax, this apex of storytelling with literally like less than 4 hours of storytelling left, and this episode happens.
Yeah.
Right? The final arc was going so well, and this episode grinds it all to a very perplexing, screeching halt, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's as if the writers they just ran out of steam at the end.
Yeah.
You hit that wall in a marathon, and you're literally like 100 yards away. One last push to the end, and you can't move your legs. You can see the end. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, literally, in this episode. And when you take a look at everything that happened in this episode, none of it mattered. None of it. Except for Odo's cure, which can be told in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So why? When you have this little left to tell all of this story, wrapping up the prophets, wrapping up the Pa-wraiths, wrapping up Cisco, wrapping up the Dominion War in less than 3 hours, and you're going to serve the audience this? Like, I don't get it. It's like someone lost a bet and said, "Nope, you got to write the bromance story for O'Brien and Bashir." And you know what? If you guys get angry, send all the emails my way. You know why? Because I want them.
Yeah.
I want the criticisms that you think that we're being unfair about this episode. Because you know why? I think I'm right. I just don't understand this episode at all. I do love William Sadler in this episode. Could care less about they tried to humanize Sloan. Sloan's the bad guy. He represents everything bad inside of Starfleet. Not just Starfleet, but pervasively throughout Starfleet. I just don't know why they did it. I don't.
Look, I will say this because, this is the part of our show where we, this question about does it hold up gets to be treated kind of however we want to from week to week. And this is a place where I think talking about the production itself, the behind the scenes, helps. And you go, oh, okay, there are story elements that got divided up among different episodes, and you have the reality of the budget in their faces, so we have to excise a bunch of other ideas and really boil it down to something more and more simple, make it a bottle show. But here's the thing, and here's why I can confidently say that it doesn't hold up as a production, because the strength of DS9 from the very beginning has been about character. And some of the best moments of this entire series have been when you've got two people in a room talking. But the talking matters, and what it reveals about the characters matters, and where it puts them on a trajectory for the next piece of, plot to be unfolded actually matters. And some of the best, you've heard me say a million times that I think Duet is such a brilliant and beautifully written episode, and it's mostly two people in a room talking. So it's hard for me to give them a lot of leeway here and say, oh, okay, you had all this build up, you have all these places to go with the series, but then you run out of budget, so you have to just have two people in your existing sets talking and doing stuff. Well, you've already shown me that you can do that brilliantly in other circumstances. But in this case, the production falls apart. And it's too bad, because There were so many other interesting things to be explored here, particularly as we have, as we're running down the clock to the very end of the series. Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously the cure is important. Obviously getting Odo cured is, one of the most important thing, if not the most important thing in this episode. So if you take like the highest narrative points in this episode and put them all, on paper, Sloan revealing the cure, Odo being cured, Miles and Julian having that one last hurrah with each other inside this fantasy that they enjoy having, together. How much of that's left of this story actually matters if you just completely erase it from the history of the series?
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah. Because what you're describing is just the plot points. It's just literally, like I said, it's the mechanics of getting from point A to point B. Got to get the cure for Odo. Okay. There's a lot of other ways to do that, you know? And this just, it was a huge misfire. And that, dear friends, brings us to the morals, meanings, messages. And look, I don't have a lot to say here because, my question to myself was, is there one at all? And I will, there are some good lines here. There's some good moments here, but that's all they are. And in the moment that we have with good Sloan, he has a line that I think is terrific. Ideology is a poor substitute for kindness and decency, and that at the very end of the day, it's our actions and not our beliefs that define who we are. That is a great line. That is so well stated and so well said. It has so much less meaning to me because it comes from somebody who is terrible. I haven't grown to a point where I can say, like, oh, yeah, wow, I really do see the good in Sloan. Wow, I hope he has this turnaround here as he lays dying on an examination table over the next 20 minutes. Wow, that really has some impact. Like, no, it has no impact anymore at that point. Virtual Sloan's admission to himself or to the family members in his head about how he cheated them and himself of a real life by living his in deceit and covering his tracks. You got to respect a bit of clarity. But, dude, you're supposed to do that when you're alive to the people who care about you. If you do it in your mind when you're laying on an examination table and you haven't really done it, it's just delusion. And the people who are hearing it are just a construct. So I guess what I'm saying is that the one redeeming thing in here is a lie, and I just talked myself out of a message.
A dazzling display of circular logic, John.
Okay, maybe the message is don't be Sloan. Don't be that guy. Okay, but you save it for us, man. Save it.
Does the ends justify the means? I think it's a big moral that I took away from it. It's heavy. It's fairly large. It blankets a lot of kind of like what's going on here for me and from what I took away. Let's go back to the line that you mentioned earlier at the very beginning of the show when Sisko said, "Genocide committed by people who call themselves Federation citizens." Sisko said this to Bashir. Let's take this one step further and more specifically. Genocide committed by people who are Starfleet officers. Not just Federation citizens, but Starfleet as Section 31 is part of the Starfleet Charter. We've heard this ad infinitum, ad nauseum throughout the course of the introduction of Section 31 since, I keep forgetting the name of the episode. Not Insurrection. You know what I'm talking about. Right before In the Pale Moonlight.
Yeah, it was a while back.
So we know where Section 31 comes from. And we know that they are synonymous with these clandestine organizations that live in the shadows. Okay, so they have extreme interrogation. You have torture. You have waterboarding. You have drug-induced coercion. These are trademarks of modern clandestine organizations of today in the 21st century. So how is what Julian and O'Brien are doing to Sloan any different? I mean, think about what they're really doing. They captured him. In a way, they're torturing him. They tried to coerce information out of him, and then they used a Frankensteinish type of technology to go inside his brain because they are so hell-bent on trying to get this information out of him that they are literally like breaking, every single possible moral code of conduct that a physician's supposed to be able to defend, do no harm. Remember that? Mm-hmm. So how is what Julian and O'Brien doing to Sloan any different, especially squeezing information from what little brain life Sloan clings onto? Is this what Odo would have wanted? Is this what Kira would have wanted, who wants so desperately for Odo to live? Odo trusts that Julian is searching for the cure. Kira looked at Julian before she left and just said, Julian? And he said, I'm working on it. So she left knowing that she's trusting him to find the cure. But at what cost? And what is truly at stake here? Sacrificing one's personal honor and morality for the sake of friendship, I think, is what is being at least tabled, to talk about here. Julian and Miles are risking a lot to save their friend. But at what cost? Let's take a look at something that's not nearly as heavy. Let's take a look at, well, maybe it is. Kirk risked everything to save Spock. Say in Amok Time, where he said that Spock has, he has saved my life, 10 times over. Isn't that worth a career? Obviously, in the search for Spock and what happened after the Wrath of Khan, Kirk said, you know what? I will sacrifice everything to save my friend and get him back,
sure,
to Vulcan, so that at least I can give him some peace after his death. Is this on that same level? Are we seeing that type of storytelling being told here, but just not nearly as well? But I'm going to pivot to one last point here. As a fan of what I believe Starfleet is supposed to represent, it's hard to reconcile that the future is supposed to be a better version of humanity, but that right now it's no different 200 years from now than where we are today. Isn't that antithetical to Star Trek's most basic philosophical DNA? The reason why I find this episode to be so uninspired, because it's literally just a convenient trapdoor to invent drama that allows Star Trek's message to be subverted for the sake of unnecessary controversy.
Preach on, man. All right, Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, the Dogs of War.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Adam Brusky, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, John Mann, Mike Richards, and Mike Schabel. It's good to know that Section 31 will never retaliate. It's not that they've run out of resources, they're just running out of episodes. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.